The United States could come to aid the Philippines, a key Pacific ally, as China targets its ships in the contested waters in the West Philippine Sea. The U.S. military is open to consultations about escorting Philippine ships in the disputed South China Sea, the head of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said Tuesday, amid a spike in hostilities between Beijing and Manila in the disputed waters. Admiral Samuel Paparo's remarks, which he made in response to a question during a news conference in Manila with Philippine Armed Forces Chief General Romeo Brawner Jr., provided a glimpse of the mindset of one of the highest American military commanders outside the U.S. mainland, on a prospective operation that would risk putting U.S. Navy ships in direct collisions with those of China. Chinese Coast Guard, Navy and suspected militia ships regularly clash with Philippine vessels during attempts to resupply Filipino sailors stationed in parts of the South China Sea claimed by both countries. As these clashes grow increasingly hostile, resulting in injuries to Filipino sailors and damage to their ships, the Philippine government has faced questions about invoking a treaty alliance with Washington. Paparo and Brawner spoke to reporters after an international military conference in Manila organized by the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, at which China's increasingly assertive actions in the South China Sea were spotlighted. Military and defense officials and diplomats from the U.S. and allied countries attended, but there were no Chinese representatives. Asked if the U.S. military would consider escorting Philippine ships delivering food and other supplies to Filipino forces in the South China Sea, Paparo replied, "Certainly, within the context of consultations."
Would the U.S. consider, certainly within the context of consultations, every option between the two sovereign nations in terms of our mutual defense? Escort of one vessel to the other is an entirely reasonable option within our mutual defense treaty among this close alliance between the two of us.
The remarks, which are likely to annoy China after a series of sea and air confrontations between the Philippines and China in the West Philippine Sea in the past week. Brawner responded cautiously to the suggestion, which could run afoul of a Philippine law, including a constitutional ban on foreign forces directly joining local combat operations.
Well, definitely we will continue our patrols in the West Philippine Sea. No, not just the maritime sea patrols, but also our air patrols. Because it is our obligation, it is our job to do that, to protect our rights, our sovereignty, and our rights in the West Philippines. The attitude of the armed forces of the Philippines, as dictated by the Philippine laws, is for us to first rely on ourselves. So we are going to try all options, all avenues that are available to us in order for us to achieve the mission. And in this case, the resupply and rotation of our troops. So while we can do it by ourselves, we will do it. And we will then seek for other options when we are already constrained from doing it ourselves.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has said there has been no situation so far that would warrant activating the treaty, which requires the allies to come to each other's aid if they come under external attack. President Joe Biden and his administration have repeatedly renewed their ironclad commitment to help defend the Philippines under the 1951 treaty if Filipino forces, ships and aircraft come under an armed attack, including in the South China Sea. Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. said at the conference that China is the biggest disruptor of peace in Southeast Asia and called for stronger international censure over its aggression in the South China Sea.
Yet, what is China trying to do? It's trying to break us apart. And that, fortunately, will not happen because I believe firmly that our leaders realize that in this region, China, although without saying it, and I'll say it for you, is the biggest disruptor of international peace in the ASEAN region. We should not allow China to define what ASEAN centrality means. We should get together in ASEAN and protect each other's sovereign rights and sovereignty, while settling our internal disputes between and amongst ourselves within the context of the ASEAN Charter.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said that the label of undermining peace can never be pinned on China, blaming unspecified other actors for making infringements and provocations in the South China Sea and introducing external forces to undermine the large picture of regional peace and stability.
Who is making infringement and provocations activities in the South China Sea? Who is introducing forces outside the region to undermine the overall peace and stability in the region? Countries in this region can see it clearly. China should by no means be blamed for undermining peace. We urge some Filipinos to face squarely the root cause of the issue. Stop sliding down the wrong path of making trouble and provocations and making and undermining peace, and stop sticking to the playbook of calling black and...
In the latest incident in the South China Sea, on August 26, Monday, Philippine officials said China deployed an excessive force of 40 ships to block 2 Philippine vessels from delivering food and other supplies to Manila's largest Coast Guard ship in Sabina Shoal. China and the Philippines blamed each other for the confrontation in Sabina, an uninhabited atoll claimed by both countries that has become the latest flashpoint in the Spratlys, the most hotly disputed region of the South China Sea. China and the Philippines have separately deployed Coast Guard ships to Sabina in recent months, on suspicion that China may act to take control of and build structures in the fishing atoll. The Philippine Coast Guard said Chinese Coast Guard and Navy ships, along with 31 suspected militia vessels, obstructed the delivery, which included an ice cream treat for the personnel aboard the BRP Teresa Magbanua as the Philippines marked National Heroes Day on Monday. Tension in the West Philippine Sea intensifies with the series of clashes between the Philippines and Chinese vessels in the hotly contested waters in the West Philippine Sea. On August 26, Monday, Philippine Coast Guard undertook a humanitarian mission involving the BRP Cabra and BRP Cape Engaño, aimed at delivering vital food and supplies to Filipino personnel stationed aboard the BRP Teresa Magbanua on extended patrol in Escort Shoal. Unfortunately, during this mission, the People's Republic of China deployed an excessive force comprised of a total of 40 vessels, including 6 Chinese Coast Guard vessels, 3 People's Liberation Army Navy warships, in an attempt to obstruct Philippines' lawful humanitarian operation. There were also 31 Chinese maritime militia vessels in the vicinity waters of Escort Shoal. On August 25, Sunday, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources vessel, BRP Datu Sanday, encountered aggressive and dangerous maneuvers from 8 Chinese maritime forces while operating from Hasa Shoal to Escort Shoal. The actions of the Chinese vessels were aimed at obstructing the BFAR vessel's humanitarian mission to resupply Filipino fishermen with diesel, food, and medical supplies. The BRP Datu Sanday was targeted by the People's Liberation Army Navy with vessel number 626 and multiple China Coast Guard ships, which attempted to encircle and block the humanitarian mission. The CCG vessels made close perilous maneuvers that resulted in ramming, blasted horns, and deployed water cannons against the BFAR vessel, eventually leading to the latter's engine failure and forcing an early termination of the humanitarian operation. These unprofessional, aggressive, and illegal actions posed serious risks to the safety of the Filipino crew and the fishermen they were meant to serve. Despite these provocative maneuvers, the crew aboard the BFAR vessel maintains high morale and remains safe and unharmed. Chinese propaganda suggesting that Filipino personnel fell overboard and were subsequently rescued by the Chinese Coast Guard are completely unfounded. This misinformation serves as a clear illustration of the PRC's willingness to distort the truth and engage in disinformation to bolster its public image. On August 22, during a maritime domain awareness flight conducted by the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, the People's Republic of China launched flares from their militarized reclaimed island in Zamora Reef, within the territorial sea of Pag-asa Island. The BFAR aircraft, Cessna 208B Grand Caravan, in coordination with the Philippine Coast Guard, was tasked with monitoring and intercepting poachers encroaching upon the Philippines' exclusive economic zone and the territorial seas of the maritime features constituting the Calayan Island Group. While the BFAR was conducting the routine patrol, the PRC unjustifiably deployed flares from Zamora Reef. This same B-4 aircraft also faced harassment from the People's Liberation Army Air Force on August 19 during an MDA flight near Bajo de Masinloc. The Chinese People's Liberation Air Force fighter jet 63,270 engaged in irresponsible and dangerous maneuvers, deploying flares multiple times at a dangerously close distance of approximately 15 meters from the B-4 Grand Caravan aircraft. The Chinese fighter jet was not provoked, yet its actions demonstrated hazardous intent that jeopardized the safety of the personnel on board the B-4 aircraft. The Philippine Coast Guard on August 19 made a successful resupply mission in the hotly contested water of the West Philippine Sea despite dangerous, deliberate and illegal maneuvers made by the Chinese Coast Guard vessels. At approximately 3:24 in the morning, Philippine Coast Guard vessels BRP Bagakay and BRP Cape Engaño encountered unlawful and aggressive maneuvers from Chinese Coast Guard vessels while en route to Patag and Laoc Islands in the West Philippine Sea. These dangerous maneuvers resulted in collisions, causing structural damage to both PCG vessels. While navigating about 23.01 nautical miles southeast of Escort Shoal, BRP Cape Engaño was subjected to aggressive maneuvers by CCG vessel 3104. This resulted in a collision with the starboard beam of the vessel, creating a hole on the deck with an approximate diameter of 5 inches. Shortly after, at 3:40 a.m., BRP Bagakay, approximately 21.3 nautical miles southeast of Escort Shoal, was rammed twice on both her port and starboard sides by CCG vessels 21,551, leading to minor structural damage. BRP Bagakay sustained damage in the auxiliary room on the port side near the port auxiliary engine, where a hole measuring 2.5 feet in length and 3 feet in width was inflicted by CCG vessels 21,551. Additionally, on the starboard quarter, CCG vessels 21,551 rammed the vessel again, resulting in damage to 13 stanchion posts and a dent measuring 1 foot. Despite these incidents, both Philippine Coast Guard vessels remain committed to and shall proceed with their mission of delivering essential supplies to personnel stationed on Patag and Laoc Islands. The Philippine Coast Guard stands firm in its responsibility to ensure the safety and security of their maritime domain while addressing any threats to their national interests. The National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea urges restraint and adherence to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and other relevant international laws to prevent further escalations and ensure the safety of all vessels operating in the region. Chinese Coast Guard spokesperson Gan Yu earlier claimed on social media platform Weibo that Philippine vessels BRP Bagakay and BRP Cape Engaño deliberately collided with a CCG vessel near Escort Shoal. On August 10, China's irresponsible actions in the high seas of the West Philippine Sea was escalated up to the skies, as Chinese fighter jets executed a dangerous maneuver and dropped flares in the path of a Philippine Air Force plane on routine patrol over the horizon of the Scarborough Shoal. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. on August 11 condemned Chinese Air Force actions in waters of the South China Sea, claimed by both countries, calling the actions unjustified, illegal and reckless. The Philippine military chief condemned Saturday's Chinese Air Force actions, what he said was the provocative actions of 2 Chinese Air Force aircraft that executed a dangerous maneuver and dropped flares in the path of a Philippine Air Force plane on routine patrol in the South China Sea. All those aboard the Philippine Air Force NC-212I light transport plane were unharmed and returned safely to Clark Air Base north of Manila after Thursday morning's incident over the Scarborough Shoal, General Romeo Bronner said, without providing other details. A top Philippine security official told the Associated Press that the Chinese jets flew at a very close distance to the Philippine Air Force turboprop plane and put the lives of the pilots in real risk and danger. Another security officer said at least 8 flares came from the Chinese fighter jets.